Hello, and welcome to Healthy Living. I'm Dr. Donald Pelto, and I'm here with a friend of mine, Riley Sweetland. He is the owner and creator of one of my favorite websites. It's called Follow Up Then. So, Riley, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, Don, thanks for having me.
So, tell me, I can see it's on your shirt, so if anyone wants to see what Follow Up Then is, so tell me a little bit about what is Follow Up Then?
Sure. So follow-up then is basically just an email address, but it's a very special type of email address. As the name implies, it helps you remember to follow up. And I think this is more easily shown than explained. So I'd like to just show a quick visual of what this email address looks like.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit more about this Follow Up Then. So this is a kind of a, looks like a email here.
Yeah. In fact, it is. It's just an email, which makes it interesting to explain because it's not an app. You don't install it. It's not a piece of software you download onto your computer. It's just an email address, and it looks something like this. So if I send an email to monday@followupthen.com, that email will come back on Monday. But it could be anything before the @ sign. So 3 p.m. for example. So if I send an email here, it will come back at 3 p.m. Or even as complicated as every Thursday at 2 p.m., which creates a recurring email in your inbox every Thursday at 2 p.m. Yeah, so the idea is that whatever's before the @ sign is any date, and after the @ sign is follow up then.
Great. So practically, let's look at some practical uses of how people would kind of use. What do they want to remember every Thursday at 2 p.m.?
Yeah, good question. So I am constantly surprised by how many different ways this can be used. So a very common one is kind of a business context where you're following up with a customer on something. So maybe you're trying to talk to a new customer or a new patient, and it's not the highest thing on their priority list to get back to you, but it's a good opportunity for you to engage that person and work together and so forth. So you could send them an email, and you could send them an email and then forward that email to something like this. Well, not this particular one in that case, but maybe something like Monday and follow up then. So you can follow up on Monday to see, like have they thought about it and so forth.
Yeah, just as an example, so I have patients maybe I see in the office, and then I want to check with them 3 days later. So I might put 3 days at follow up then, and I don't put any patient identifiers in the email, maybe just a quick reminder, and it'll send it back to me to check on them. So it works, that's the way I kind of use it, so that's a way I think a lot of people use it.
Yeah, that's great. It's worth noting that there are a few ways you can use it. So it is just an email address, but as you know, you can put an email address in the to field, the CC field, or the BCC field of an email. And each of those things does something a little bit different. So the most simple example is what we described. You just forward an email to the future or send yourself a future reminder, and then it comes back at that time.
Okay.
That works great for various cases. Using your inbox as a to-do list is a great example. People say you're not supposed to do that. I think it can work as long as you manage and you're conscious of the time when that to-do item arrives in your inbox.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So if you put it in the CC field, it actually reminds everybody who's in the to field. So you can have multiple people in the to field, and if you want to remind all of them, you can put a follow-up then address in the CC field.
Yeah, so like let's say you had an office meeting every Wednesday, so you could remind everyone, put everyone's name in there, and every Tuesday they could get a message, oh, remember the meeting we have on Wednesday.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's a perfect example. And then lastly, the BCC field is great for the first example I gave, where you have a client or a patient and you want to follow up with them, but you don't want them to get an automatic email reminder. It's kind of a more, you use it in a way that only reminds you. And because it's in the BCC field, it's totally invisible to the recipient of the email, yet you still receive the email reminder.
Yeah, I think this is the way you kind of make an empty email box, is by kind of doing it this way.
Yeah, and that's a big subject, the empty email inbox, the elusive inbox zero. That's something we could get into now, or we can get into in a little.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit more about these. I think there's a couple of other ways you can use it, right?
Yeah, there are. We'll save the big one for last, because inbox zero is something that we think a lot about.
Okay.
But yeah, a few other ways you could use it. So personal relationships is another example. So staying in touch with somebody. So let's say there's a distant contact, somebody you want to stay in touch with, but maybe you don't remember to call them ever. They're not a relationship that's close enough to constantly stay in touch with. But remembering somebody's birthday is a really good way to create kind of a long-term personal relationship.
Correct. Yeah.
So you could send somebody an email, say, nice meeting you. Maybe you're connected on Facebook. You could find their birthday. And then in the BCC field, you just type in their birthday, whatever that date is. And so every year you receive that reminder, and you can send that person a personal email at that time, which just shows there's a lot of thought that you put into that.
Well, yeah, and it doesn't seem like a lot of thought, but you're putting a lot more thought than anyone else has, because you have a system to remind you of these things. Yeah, perfect, wonderful.
Exactly. Yeah, I think another one, we touch on this in our one of our introductory videos, but reminding to order flowers in time for Valentine's Day. That's a good one. Remembering anniversaries. There's a lot of personal finance kind of scenarios that work really well. So if there's a bill that's due on the 16th of every month, you might want to schedule a follow-up every 16th at follow-up then, so that you get an email in your inbox to check on the status of that bill once a month. In fact,
yeah, go ahead.
Another tip on that is you can send a link to the exact page that you need to go to in the reminder. So when that reminder arrives, it's just one click and to check the information, and then you're done.
It sounds like it's almost replacing or helping you with your calendar.
Yeah, it actually fills a space that I would say is somewhere in between your to-do list, your calendar, and your email inbox. There's kind of a space in there where, a task might not be big enough to put on your to-do list. It's not long enough to put in your calendar. It's not like you have to set aside a block of time, but it's something that needs to be touched on. It's a follow-up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we fill that. We try to kind of fill that empty gap.
Perfect. I know the next ones are going to be a little more sophisticated. Did you want to talk a little bit about how it began, and then we can go to the more complex ones?
Yeah. I could touch also on there's an autocomplete aspect. Well,
yeah,
I guess
go ahead. Yeah, you can do do the autocomplete. I was thinking you're going to get to the cell phone and SMS things, but we can do the autocomplete. I think that's great.
Okay, great. That is great. Okay, so one of the things that I think is one of our users' favorite aspects of the tool is that it uses your email client's ability to autocomplete email addresses. So once you type in an address once, you only have to type 1 or 2 characters for it to be pulled up in your suggestions list. So this is great for a mobile phone, for example, or a tablet. So you just type 3, like in this case, and we can choose between 3 months and 3 hours. But it's the same with Monday or Tuesday, next week, whatever reminders you tend to use.
Perfect.
And we have something that sets up a list of the most common formats when you sign up, when people sign up for the service. In fact, emailing autocomplete at followupthen.com sends back an email which can actually set up all of these, or a number of these email address formats in your address book.
So the overall general feature that you have works really, really well, and the whole goal, it sounds like, is that either dealing with something right now or having it come back to you when you have time to deal with it, or when you can take action. Isn't that the whole idea? Because I think a lot of people, you have these, for example, I'll send an email to someone and I'll keep a copy, I'll send it to me, and then I leave it in my email box for like a week or two when I need to get back to them. And that creates, in my opinion, a lot of clutter. Isn't that correct? Isn't that one of the challenges?
Yes, Don, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, philosophically, what we're trying to do is really have people think more about the future. I mean, everything is happening right now, especially with the Facebook messages and Twitter. This real-time web concept is just converging at the present moment. and there's a lot of competition for our attention. Of course, with email as well, but I think it applies more broadly. So what we're philosophically doing is taking all these things that happen right now that take your attention and make you think you're totally overwhelmed in the present, and let you spread them out at times in the future when you can actually get each thing done.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's what we find from our kind of feedback from our users, is people talk about being more free in the present, and this, being a more mindful, because you don't have your attention, being pulled into these emails that you can't help but glance at as you're looking into your inbox.
Yeah, and I think sometimes we almost let our email make our agenda for us instead of us making our own agenda.
Yes, in fact, there's a great quote. I think it's from somebody named Chris Sacca. He says, email is the to-do list that was written for you by somebody else.
Yeah, yeah. So where did this idea come from? Was this your idea? Was this a friend's idea? When I came across it, I was amazed. I'm like, wow, I didn't know this really existed, and I think a lot of people don't know it exists.
So it emerged from a personal need. I was emailing a friend / coworker, and I knew he was going to forget about the email, and I knew I was going to have to follow up with him. And I just thought about the mental effort to go to my calendar and put it in my calendar, or go to my to-do list and just have yet another item cluttering up one of these things. And I also had another friend at the time. His name's Jeff Lindsay, who was thinking a lot about kind of stretching the boundaries of email, what you could do with email.
Uh-huh.
And in that email I mentioned that I sent to my friend / coworker, I said, wouldn't it be nice if we could just type in a reminder date and an email address? And he's a software developer. I'm a software developer. We got together on a Friday night and we prototyped it very quickly. And when we first built it, it worked. We would basically get a reminder message that was just an email full of error messages. but the reminder worked. It arrived at the right time, and we go, oh yeah, we got to do that thing. So we used it in this kind of half-broken state for a little bit, and we found ourselves using it more and more. So we eventually polished it up. We sent it to Lifehacker, which is it's a productivity website, and they decided to publish it. We were thrilled and kind of surprised, actually.
Yeah.
And then people started using it. And again, to our surprise, people started using it in ways we didn't expect. I thought it was mainly going to be for kind of chasing up emails, when you send somebody an email and then you need to kind of follow up to make sure that something happens.
Yep.
But people started talking about this more philosophical case that you were mentioning, this, let me just forward my life to the future and have a moment to work on a project right now. And just trust that email will arrive back in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And so that really opened up my eyes to something bigger, that there could be something bigger here.
Yeah. And how long has it been around? How long have you guys been around in terms of years? When did it start?
Yeah, that story was, I believe, February of 2010.
Okay. Wonderful.
Yeah, and it's organic. It was just people telling other people about it. And we still have almost entirely word of mouth kind of, we don't market it a lot because people tend to tell each other about it.
Yeah.
And only actually about 2 years ago did I kind of transition out of my other business and kind of start to do this full time. And now we have some great investors, and it's exciting.
Yeah. Now, I know a lot of the people that are watching this, they might be wondering, do I have to be technical to do this? Like, is it really hard to learn? I know on your website you have a little place where you can start typing in stuff and it'll say what it'll do. What's the learning curve?
Yeah, well, we have a lot of very, very non-technical users because it's just an email address. So if you can send an email and type in an email address, then you can use follow up then.
Wonderful. So there's not another app to download. There's not another password to remember. There's not all these things.
Nope. You can set a password, but we also have the option if you want to go check on your follow-ups, you can type in your email and it will send you a link to check on your follow-ups.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Neat.
But it's the idea is that it's the absolute simplest way to schedule an email reminder. That's what we're really trying to do.
That's why it's my favorite website. Okay, so now we're going to get to the high point here. How can people have an empty email box? That's what everyone wants to know, because everyone has 10,000 messages, and what are some great tips for having an empty email box?
Sure. Okay. So first of all, I would like to preface this by acknowledging the different ways of managing your email. And inbox zero is one way, and people are very passionate about it. It's really satisfying to have nothing in your inbox. So that's understandable. Some people, however, prefer what I call the inbox fire hose method, where you have a flood of information coming in and you pick and choose what you're going to respond to and what you're going to work with. And depending on your workflow and the nature of your inbox and how you use it, you can use either. I'm going to touch on the inbox zero first, because the inbox fire hose case is pretty simple, how to use follow-up then there. So, but with inbox zero, I think it's important to start with kind of an awareness of your own contexts in life. Like when would you like to just read newsletters, for example? When are your really high, like more mentally demanding tasks? And kind of think about the context of your day or of your week or your month. And once you kind of have this idea of your, kind of future moments where you're more productive for a certain shape of task in those moments, you can forward emails of certain types to certain moments in the future.
Perfect.
So if you have a newsletter sitting in your inbox and you'd love to read it, but you don't have time right now, instead of leaving it there to, call your attention again and again and again, with the witty headline that I'm sure is in the email newsletter because they crafted it very, very carefully, you can send that to something like Friday at 3 p.m. and follow up then. Because do you have the mental bandwidth at Friday at 3 p.m. to do some really intense task? Like, you probably want to read a newsletter at that point. So newsletters and that type of information you can forward to Friday at 3 p.m.
Okay.
Business follow-ups, though, might be very time sensitive. You might be emailing with someone and you notice they always get back to you at about 10:30 a.m. So they're probably reading their email every morning right around that time. So when you send them an email in the BCC field, you would say, 10:30 a.m., maybe in a week or two, because that's right when they're going to respond to that email. So that's another case. So anyway, with that kind of method of looking at your inbox and finding the emails that you're looking at again and again and again that you don't want to forget, picking a time in the future when you can address it and forwarding it there, before you know it, you'll find that your inbox quickly goes to zero.
Yeah, it's very liberating.
Yeah. Yes. Agreed.
And also you talked about in terms of, let's say you always email someone and they usually get back to you, but what happens if they forget to get back to you? And that's where it's good in the BCC. Maybe we can go and talk a little bit about some of the high techs, like the response detection or the SMS or the, I don't know how much you want to go about the calendar. There's a lot of other ways that you can use it. So maybe you can delve a little deeper if you want to show the screen again or just talk about those things.
Yeah, sure. I'd love to. Before I move on, though, why don't I just wrap up the one part about, I want to give the inbox fire hose people a little bit of because there's a lot of us out there, I'll say. And the way I have multiple inboxes. I manage one as a fire hose inbox, and I manage another as an inbox zero.
Okay, let's talk about that. Yeah.
So the inbox fire hose method can be extremely useful for certain types of people. I've heard a journalist one time describe their inbox just as a flurry of emails. They just continuously get emails, and they pick ones just based off of headlines. So follow-up then can be great in that case. If you find something that's interesting and that you need to do something about, you just open it and forward it to a future moment to then appear back at the top of your inbox fire hose to give you another, couple days to look at it until it drops again off the bottom.
Okay.
If it's important, you could actually forward it to something like every week at follow-up then. So it continuously goes to the top of your inbox before it disappears off the bottom.
Wonderful, wonderful. And you, just to be complete, I'm sure you would recommend as well, if you don't want certain things, unsubscribe. That's going to make it easier to get your email list to zero. And I know, go ahead.
Yes, yes. I kind of focused more on the follow-up then case, but oh yeah, that there are some great services to both unsubscribe to promotional newsletters and also to aggregate them. Unroll Me, for example. So there are services that take all of your newsletters and put them into a single digest. So that's a great way to do it. Different email programs. This is a little bit more technical side of an inbox zero technique, but you can create rules where certain emails go into certain categories automatically.
Yep. That's what I found helpful. I have a folder that's called optional. And so everything I tag as optional, everything that I really don't need to see, but I want to look at it maybe once a week, I put it in optional. And some are marked as read, some other aren't read, and it works really, really well. So I have the main one and then the optional one.
Yeah, that's a great way to do it. Yeah, another one too is to connect your email to some service that stores information. A lot of people use their email inbox as kind of a database.
Yeah.
And depending on what email program you use, that can work really well. But if you use something like Evernote or Bear or another note-taking application, it's really nice to know how to forward data into that system. Because that way you can keep your email inbox as, your communication system, and then you can forward your information you need to save for some purpose into more of like a filing application.
So Riley, so tell me a little bit more about the SMS and the response detection and some of these kind of higher level areas.
Sure. So sometimes you need a reminder, but you're not going to be by your email. And it's an important event. So for example, a conference call that you need to remember. So we have a format or something you append to your date format, -SMS, that gives you a text message at the same moment as an email reminder. So this is great. You could put a phone number in the subject line, for example, and when the SMS arrives on your phone, you can just one-click call that phone number at that moment.
Wonderful, wonderful.
So another one of the more advanced features is response detection. So we have a lot of, I think we all can relate with the forgetful recipient problem that you mentioned earlier. You email somebody and you're not sure if they're going to get back to you. You only need a reminder if they don't reply. If they do reply, then there's no reminder needed because you have that email in your inbox. So if you append -R to a date, for example, Monday, 10:30 a.m. -R, at follow-up, then you receive that email. You receive that reminder only if the person doesn't reply.
Okay.
This is good, especially for, if there's a sales context or somebody just is contacting a lot of people and they need a lot of reminders, but they don't want to be overwhelmed with unneeded reminders.
Yeah, it's great because sometimes you send an email to someone and it might get lost in their email list. And so not that they intentionally didn't get back to you, but they just have too many emails and, I'll get back to it next week, and they don't have follow-up then. But you'll get an email, and so a lot of times what I do is I resend them the email back and just, hey, just a quick reminder here. Oh, I'm sorry, or something like that. That works pretty well. There's also the to-do list as well, right? The -T, where it can be a task.
Yes. So a task type follow-up is when you need to get something done, and it's important that you actually complete that task. So that if you append -T to a date format, it will arrive at the normal time just when you schedule it. But if you don't click the complete button that is now added to that email follow-up, it will then continue to remind you every day. So it basically is insurance, email insurance for getting something done.
Yeah, and that can be both for you or for someone else. That's the nice thing. Like if you need to do a newsletter once a month, it'll send it to you until you get it done. But if someone else needs something done, it'll bug them until they get it done.
So there are so many ways you could use follow-up then to put something in the future that we were thinking these future moments are extremely, they're valuable. Like getting the right information at the right time is really valuable, but we're only sending a reminder at this point. So what if we could add something more than a reminder? So for example, if you needed to call somebody at a certain time at a future moment, let's take that, 10:30 a.m. business follow-up
Yep.
case.
Yep.
Instead of just receiving an email reminder, what if you received an email reminder with all of that person's contact data?
Nice.
So when on your mobile phone, you could just, click the phone number, read the notes from your address book or customer relationship program. So basically sending everything you need at that moment. But there could be any number of things like that. So you need to order flowers for your anniversary. So 6 weeks before, or let's say 3 weeks before your anniversary, you receive an email follow-up with one button that says, click here to order flowers.
Wonderful.
And it's, you do that one action and it's done. So we're looking at kind of the intersection of putting exactly the right data with exactly the right time to make this kind of productive moment. And that's kind of our focus for the future. And the kind of the basis, or what we're using to create this kind of the means to do that, it basically is the building blocks that we use to make follow-up then. So this new kind of direction for us is kind of it's more focused for software developers.
Okay.
To take the tools of follow-up then that we used to build follow-up then to create similar tools for various different cases. So for flowers, for example, or customer relationships, or following up on invoices for collections, project management cases. There's so many different ways that could be used that we couldn't possibly do all of them.
And then as we conclude here, I just want to share with any of the viewers any other productivity tips that you have, because it sounds like you're very productive with email. Any other email tips or other types of tips for productivity?
Yeah. Well, I would like to share this inbox triage technique that I picked up at one point. So when you have an inbox that's just completely full, it's, I've seen people go to the top of the list. They handle that first email thoroughly. It might take 10 or 15 minutes. And then when they're done with that, new emails have come in and they keep going to the next one at the top, and their backlog gets pushed down. And you just know there's some important things down there. You don't know what they are and so forth. So the inbox triage kind of mindset is when you show up to work and you have a bunch of emails, go through every email and you go through a quick checklist. First of all, is it important? Yes or no. Do I need to do something about this? Can I do this in 2 minutes or less? If it's yes, then do it. If no, then keep it in the list or star it or forward it to follow up then for some future moment. Just keep the email knowing you're going to have to do something about it. But quickly go through your emails like that, archiving or deleting the ones you don't need, and doing the 2-minute ones, just doing as many as you can.
Yep.
So that way you have your list consolidated of the emails that are going to take some effort into a small block of emails. And so at least you have some context now. Okay, what do your major tasks look like? So that's a great way to approach an overloaded inbox.
Perfect. Great. Well, I want to thank you, Riley. This is Riley from Follow Up Then, and really appreciate you coming to talk to us. And everyone can look at your website. It's www.followupthen.com.
Great, Don. Well, thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Great. Thank you.